Okay, so we're going to be looking at equations, and I just want to talk for a minute about equations and maybe why we should study equations. And I guess I can come up with maybe 3 good reasons. Well, they're good in my eyes, maybe not in yours, but here we go. 3 reasons I can see why we should study equations, and here's reason 1. So reason 1 is maybe sometime in the not too distant future you're going to end up with a job, and a job that maybe looks at lots of formulas. And so maybe you'll end up with some sort of, I don't know, like a crazier nuclear physicist or something along those lines. And maybe one day you'll be sitting there and you'll be thinking, I probably can't remember the speed of light. What's the speed of light? And so you'll think about that and you think, well, hey, actually, I do remember one particular formula. And that one particular formula will be E equals mc squared. And you'll remember that the E stands for energy, M stands for mass, and C stands for the speed of light. And you'll think, well, there was that experiment I did where I had that little tiny massive radioactive material and it gave off that massive amount of energy. And so you'll think, well, maybe if I took those results and substitute them in this formula, I could solve the equation to work out what C is. And so you think, well, I'll take my energy and I'll divide it by my mass, and that'll give me what C squared is. And then you think, well, C squared, well, if that's C squared, then continuing with our inverse operations, we'll use C is equal to the square root of E over M. And you'll remember, of course, that when C squared is equal to something, C must be plus or minus the square root of E over M. But then you'll think, well, in this case, does the minus really matter? And then you'll have worked out the speed of light. So that's my reason 1. Perhaps sometimes in your career you may need to do this. Reason 2. Here's reason 2. Reason 2, perhaps you're not going to be a nuclear physicist. Perhaps you know you're going to be rich and famous because you're going to blog and everyone's going to read your blogs. And after you blog and you get rich and famous, you're going to buy yourself a nice house. And when you buy yourself a nice house, you're probably going to think to yourself, I need to build a pergola. And so when I build that pergola, I know that I have to have a bit of a slope in here. Because otherwise, if I don't have that slope, when it rains, the wind will blow the rain back up the roof and it'll come in here and that won't be good for my house. So you'll be thinking about this slope and you'll be thinking, well, I know the slope has to be 3 degrees. So this 3-degree slope has to be here. So I wonder how much shorter these posts have to be than this distance over here. And you'll think back and you'll remember an area of maths you haven't studied quite yet, which is called trigonometry. And you'll think about your trigonometry and you'll go, well, this looks like it's an opposite side and this looks like it's an adjacent side. That's a right angle. I've got a triangle. And you'll go, that's right. Tan, opposite over adjacent. So you'll say, well, my tan and my 3 degrees must be my opposite over adjacent. And then you'll do some measurements and you'll find that adjacent side down there is 4.2 metres. So you'll say, therefore, tan of 3 degrees is opposite over 4.2. And you'll have your equal signs nicely written down. You'll be showing good working out and you'll remember all your inverse operations and you go ahead and solve this and you'll know exactly what the opposite side is. And you'll be able to go ahead and build your pergola, and that way, when it rains, you'll be sitting comfortably underneath it knowing that you won't get dripped on. Reason 2. That brings us to reason 3. So reason 3. Reason 3, one day maybe you will be applying for a job and your potential employer will be talking to you and she'll say to you, I'm looking for someone who can work systematically, who can work logically, who can follow procedures and rules. And they can do all this to complete tasks. And they can do all this complete tasks in a manner that shows what you've done so that someone else can come along and follow what you've done or repeat what you've done. And you'll sit there and they'll ask you, are you up to the task? And you'll sit there and you'll say, well, actually, I solved equations when I was in year 9 and my teacher taught me how to systematically and logically follow the rules and procedures to complete it and also taught me about showing my working out. And I'm pretty sure that I'm up to this task and I'm pretty sure I can flip burgers in your restaurant. Thank you very much. So there's 3 reasons as to why we may study equations. Reason 1, working with formulas. Reason 2, maybe some application later on in life around the home or some other area of life. Reason 3, the knowledge and skills we'll get from it in our systematic or logical working out. Anyway, off to equations.